Welcome back to the R&B Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Miss Regina B. I'm alongside my lovely co-host, CEO Brittany Nicole. This week, we wanted to go ahead and give you guys a little taste of something a little bit different, especially in this climate. It's very easy to find yourself debating, arguing, ready to choke someone out from time to time along different topics. So the thing about myself and Brittany is that we tend to debate on anything and everything under the sun. This week, we wanted to go ahead and make sure that you guys had a chance to take a peek into one of our little debates. Our topic that we decided on are basic rights, right? We have a lot of our rights right now in this climate that are pretty much up for grabs. And it's very easy to find yourself on one side of the aisle or the other. So we intend to debate these topics from one standpoint or the other. Now, we invite you all to join in on this discussion. We really want to hear what everyone has to say.
Yes, talk to us in the comments. Let us know what you're thinking, where you stand, why. I'm a big why person. I'm not so much, I'm not so much an attacker of where your standpoint is, but I'm going to need you to know why. It can't just be because I feel like it or because I think so.
Biggest thing, make sure that you can back it up. If you feel that way, that's fine. I just need you to back it up and explain yourself.
Back it up, back it up.
So the first topic that I think that we should start on is the topic of abortion.
Period.
Right? It's a hot button issue. Most people feel very strongly for it or against it.
I agree.
Right? And then in this country, something happened that we didn't think was actually going to happen. It had always been on every political agenda since as far back as I could remember, right? Do we get rid of it? Is it going to be okay? Is it for religious reasons? Whatever the case might be.
Right.
And they went ahead and they got rid of it federally and they left it up to the states. My personal stance on this legally is that I feel like it's dangerous to ban abortion. I know that your idea is different, so I want you to go ahead and start and open the floor on that.
Okay, well, let me just say disclaimer, first and foremost. I completely respect and empathize with anyone in their personal decision. Let me just put that out there. Not that I think that the personal decision should be, not that I think that the regulation should be led by personal decision, because that's where she and I differ.
Right.
However, my personal respect for another person's personal decision is 100% there. So let me just get that out before y'all get mad at me. Okay. Personally, my opinion is that abortion should not be legal, and with the exception of cases where it's a medically necessary process. And even then, it's debatable for me on how far along we're talking. And then at that point, I would think it would be more on the choice of the mother and the father and the parents of the said child.
That's a big hot button issue that I want to touch base on, right? Because it's always been the argument. Oh, well, of course there's going to be exceptions. What about rape? What about incest? What about medically necessary? Ever since this is going into effect, we have seen different cases across the country where women have died because we've been in this crux of trying to figure out, have we met that threshold of what's medically acceptable yet? Meanwhile, she's hemorrhaging, she's bleeding out, whatever the case might be. I think that we have lost the sense of common sense and the ability for people to make their own decisions, right? That medical professional that's sitting there in the room should be able to make their own decision without fear of prosecution to save that woman's life. Now her and the baby are both gone. Then what? You know? Just because at that time, the choice to go ahead and evacuate at that moment would be the only way to save that woman's life. Now they're both gone because this legislation has gotten in the way of these people actually doing their job, right? So even when it comes down to ideas of rape and incest, now we have to prove it. How many people, victims of rape without even a pregnancy involved, don't come forward because of the trauma of having to relive that experience? What does that threshold of proof look like?
Right. So for me, I'm going to say this for sure and for certain. The only situation that I personally feel as though there should be an allowance for abortion is the medical situation, because it's a life or death situation. And, you know, we make multiple situations in medicine that are life and death and life-saving practices, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that would fall under that for me. Outside of that, it's 100% a moral standpoint that I stand on as far as giving and taking away life. I personally feel that giving life and taking away life is solely in the hands of God. That's it. That's all. So yes, in our human mindset and lifestyle and just the level of our human understanding, there's going to be inconvenient times where those things weigh down on us emotionally, mentally, physically, things like rape, things like incest. However, if you really want to be technical, there's aspects in life where every aspect of life includes those things. You have people who are diagnosed with cancer. You have people who are hit by a car and now they don't have any legs. You have people that their life is shifted in major ways based on a traumatic experience. And so in my book, I categorize rape, incest, things like that as one of those traumatic life experiences that by no fault of our own makes its way into our life path.
However, but I feel like even with everything else, right, when it comes to the examples that you just gave,
right.
Things like a car crash, things like losing limbs, whatever the case might be, cancer, we do whatever's necessary to minimize the effects of that trauma.
Absolutely. I agree.
So for some people, having an abortion after having one of those traumatic experiences might be part of what they need to do to minimize the effects of that trauma. By your definition, that would be the same process that we're going on. But hold on.
I'm listening.
By your definition, that would be the same process. Exactly. And I think that especially when you say about, you know, the ability for God to give and take, right, and things of that nature, biblically and morally, I do believe, like, yeah, God does have the final say so. However, when it comes to human beings, like flesh and blood, we tend to pick and choose about when and how much God has, you know, a say so, and when and how our free will comes into play, and what exactly qualifies as morally acceptable, what qualifies as religiously acceptable, all the different things. And people can give me all the stories about how, oh, well, this person that went through this trauma, they came out and they have this glorious story to share and things of that nature. They are the outlier. For most people, trauma has a very, very adverse negative effect.
That's true. Yes.
They're a very adverse negative effect, and I think that is very unfair to people that are having a hard time managing their traumas, to use those examples of that person that was able to use it as a source of strength, you know, as if that's supposed to be what they have to aspire to now. I don't accept that.
So this is where the two sides differ for me. In the examples that I use, like you said, to my point that you used, my point when I referenced getting hit by a car, being diagnosed with cancer, different life shifts that happen, these are all situations that affect that person and themselves. You get hit by a car, you might have a choice. Do I keep my legs and not be able to walk on them? Or do I remove my legs and I get prosthetics? Or these are all free will choices that are able, like you said, to lighten the blow of the effects. However, none of these situations involve another life directly. Now, of course, it involves our family, our support system. They're going to have to push us in the wheelchair versus if they are not, you know, or if they're going to, these are other types of trickling effects. But when your direct decision completely eliminates a life, and not just a life, but
it eliminates the potential of a life.
Yes and no, because
the potential.
Yes
of
and
a
no,
life.
and this is something that I've learned recently in science and research. So at the time of conception, there's actually, and I have to redo my research. I'm gonna come back in the comments.
Girl,
I'm gonna do my research.
Please don't say something that hasn't been proven, because
No.
I will come back with another episode just to disprove it.
No, this is real facts. I just learned this recently, but I have to get the proper terminology before I misspeak.
Yeah.
But at the time of conception, when the sperm meets the egg, there is a glow. There's a light that is formed at the exact time of conception, and it's
Is that the spirit landing?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. But my thing is this is my thing when it all boils down, right? You have people who have infertility issues. You have people who can't conceive. You have people who, no matter how hard they try, you can pay for it. You can wish upon a star. You can try to use AI, and you may never have a child. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's in God's hands. And you're only going to get a child if God sees fit that you should have one. No matter what method you use, no matter what scientific strategy you try to go around.
I also argue that even with that same idea, there's a combination in a marriage between God and man, right? God exists, but we have free will.
That's true.
He gives us the option to choose, and he also created science to give us those options. So even to sit there and say, oh, with or without the science, you was going to have a baby or not. That's not necessarily true, you know, because the science has proven what happens with these numbers. It's proven because, full disclosure, I've gone through the fertility process before.
Yeah.
So it's like, you know, science tells you that if you want to do super ovulation, your chances increase to this percent.
Right.
Because
and don't get me wrong. I'm not
IVF,
saying
it goes up to the XYZ.
That's the thing. I'm not saying that the chances and the statistics don't fluctuate. But at the end of the day, what I'm saying is I'm using an example of there's people who have done IVF that have paid top dollar, that have done as many chances and attempts that they could possibly do and have still not been blessed with a child.
Oh, I agree with you. And the science also says that it's not 100%.
Right.
It says that there's a certain percentage.
But it all boils down to purpose and fate as well. Because yes, we make free will choices that help navigate where our life goes, of course, because the choice you make versus the choice I make does definitely help define the path that our lives go in. However, when it comes to creating life, there's only but so much control that our free will will have on that.
So you know what?
We cannot create life.
Right.
No matter how hard we try, it's never going to be a sure fact on ever creating life on our own without God, and not in the human form that we know it as life today.
So like what you just said about purpose and fate, right?
Right.
I think that sometimes people believe that it has to be about purpose, fate, all of that good stuff, spirituality, or whatever the case might be, and they don't put enough of an emphasis on exactly how much we actually have a decision to make,
That's
right?
a fact, yeah.
How much our own ambitions and whatever it is that we want has to mold our lives. At the end of the day, like, you know me, I tend to, as I'm moving, I tend to pop up my phone and just watch random shows. And there was something, I forget the name of it, but Preacher, actually, that was the name of the show. It was called Preacher. And it's a really, really trashy show, but I enjoyed it. And it was basically about a preacher that got like some type of superpower where it was like the voice of God, where he can encourage people to do whatever by like using this deep voice, right? And one of the things that they went into in the show was very much like a parody, right? So they actually found God himself. He was like roaming earth and was like drunk and like somewhere crazy and stuff like that. And everybody kept talking about how God versus free will, God versus free will, God versus free will. And meanwhile, when they found God at the end of the episode, he was like drunk in the back and stuff like that. And Preacher got upset, like, oh my goodness, like I was riding for you from the beginning of the time. And then the guy that was supposed to be so funny, he's like, well, I told y'all from the beginning that y'all had free will. What do you want me to do? I'm on vacation, you know? And I think that we sometimes lean too heavily into that idea of God knows all. And I know I've said it before, but I'll say it again. We only do that when we really want to do it. When it's convenient.
Yeah, and so this is my stand on that. I'm definitely not a fake hypochondriac. Like, I'm a full, firm believer that we have control and that actually God relies on and expects us to make these decisions based on what he's given us to make the decisions with, including our knowledge, our experience, and our resources. But what I will say is that, to your point, the convenience of what our free will is, I feel like in this particular sense of abortion, I feel like people are using the free will as a convenience because having a baby at a time when they don't want to have a baby is extremely inconvenient. And so for me, the convenience of that decision is where abortion is really supported because it's all about convenience. If you ask me, it's 100% about convenience.
I disagree.
Without, I'm going to put it like this, with the exception of the medical situation. Anything outside of medical is convenience. It's based on if I'm financially ready, if I'm mentally ready, if I'm at the right point in my life, if it's going to be traumatic or not because of whatever happened to me.
I think that's unfairly reductive to just say that unless they got pinned down by some stranger that it's a matter of convenience. That's completely unfairly reductive.
So give me an example then. Give me an example of a time.
No, I won't. You know why? Because I think that people are forcing women to have to qualify their things as enough of an acceptable trauma in order for them to make a decision. For them to make a decision that is right for their circumstance. And I think that you don't get to determine how badly someone is affected by their circumstance.
That's not what I mean. That's not what I mean. I'm not judging how serious or not serious. I'm asking you to give me an example of a situation where someone is considering abortion that is not relying on convenience.
But
that's it.
But literally,
not the level of convenience.
So even
not if it's good enough or bad enough of a situation.
All right, I'm going to use some examples like this.
When would somebody consider an abortion where it's
I'm not going to put any names on it, but like even if you have somebody, right, that might be married, right, probably shouldn't be married, right,
okay,
but they're doing all the things that religiously they're supposed to be. They have like no money. Husband want to keep procreating. She can't. She's in a bind. You know what I mean?
Right.
Is she now just in a matter of convenience because she's in a really hard situation and she can't figure out how to make her way out of it? And she doesn't really have a choice. And I don't think that it's fair for women to have to explain these things.
And see,
that's one example.
And that's where we agree. Let me put this on record because that's where we agree. We agree that it's unfair. The fairness is not what I'm debating. I'm not debating unfairness. It's extremely unfair. These situations that we are in are a lot of times very much unfair. What I'm debating is not even so much.
So you don't find it reductive to call something like that just convenient versus inconvenient? And that's where I'm getting at, where it's unfairly and critically reductive to say something like that because everybody has their different circumstances.
I agree.
And for them, that has a huge effect on their life. So just say, oh, it's just not convenient. Because maybe your decision would be different if you had a different circumstance. But
I totally agree.
Your circumstances are always dependent on your own perspective, right? And I think that we always severely
most of our decisions are based on convenience.
And we always, not convenience. I say that. I prefer perspective over convenience, right? Because we could have the same exact situation, or at least what you think is the same exact situation, but because our perspectives are different, we have a completely different outtake on it, and that's okay. That's why like those TV shows where they'll play the same day over and over again from everybody's thing looks completely different.
But that's what I mean,
the perspective has an effect.
Right, and I agree, but that's what I mean. Just because our perspectives are different and what you decide to do versus what I decide to do doesn't take away the convenience factor.
Nope,
it doesn't take it away.
Disagree.
We're gonna have to.
I think
because it makes people not want to. This is my opinion.
And I think the idea of labeling convenient ends up being extremely judgmental.
It's ugly, and that's the part that we don't like.
Judgmental.
That's the part we don't like.
So Christians want to say, "Oh, we don't judge. Judgment is up to the Lord," but then we want to convenience other women to the death because they made a decision, and I think that's completely unfair. And I think that it's unfair to make these people have to describe why they did it and everything else. And I do want to go on record to say that personally, I don't like abortion. I don't like it. I thank God that I haven't had to do it and things of that nature.
And let me
stop you. Wait. I do want to get it off.
Go ahead.
I understand why people would have to do it, and I don't think that anybody should ever have to explain their choices, right? It's dangerous. And then on top of that, from a legal standpoint, it's dangerous because even down to like the young girl versions that we saw like through the 90s and stuff like that, where people would, the trash bag baby syndrome and all that good stuff. Yeah. People used to try to do it on their own with a wire hanger. It's literally not safe. Yeah. It's never on the government, or it should never be okay for the government to have that much choice in your own life.
And this is where I want to interject. So as she says, she doesn't like abortion personally, where I'm on the standpoints where I'm against it morally and just in our lifestyle. I don't think it should be a legal entity. It doesn't mean people aren't going to do what they want to do. They're not going to have free will and free choice to do what they want to do regardless. People kill people every day. People sell drugs every day. These things are all illegal things on paper, and people do them every day for their own respective reasons. And I'm not saying that everyone who does illegal things are doing something wrong just because it's deemed illegal. However, if we're looking at a standpoint of right and wrong, and we're using, which, let me be clear, America is one of the last places that I feel aligns law with morality. Let's be very clear.
That we can agree on 100%.
This is the last place. So where I'm using that as the base of my decision of why I think it shouldn't be legal, I'm not saying that aligns with the American practice, because it absolutely doesn't. However, I'm also going to make it clear, just like Regina made it clear that she doesn't like abortion. I'm going to make it clear that whereas though I don't agree with abortion, I have had an abortion. So let me be clear on that. I'm not greater art thou and just far removed from the experience. I had an abortion at a point in time in my life. I was very young, and I've had children very young, and I got pregnant in between having children, and it just was an inconvenient time for me at the moment. And so this is why I say that for me and my personal beliefs, decision of an abortion is 99.99999% relied on whether this is a convenient time, a convenient situation, a convenient process for me as a mother, as a woman at this current time. And this is the driving force usually for an abortion. And I don't think it's anything necessarily wrong with that when we look at empathy, because don't get me wrong, just because I feel that something is not right, that's just me in my mind wearing my big girl drawers. It doesn't mean that I like it. I don't like the fact that abortion is not right in my mind. I'm not like, yes, go and be super depressed and live through your trauma and tough it out. No, I'm super empathetic to the situation, but I'm also putting my big girl drawers on enough to say that if I'm going to answer accurately in my morals, that I don't believe that we should have that power to do as human beings because we didn't put it there. And I believe that we interfere with God's plan if he put it there.
So I will say this.
In the sense, let me finish. In the sense that I don't believe God makes mistakes. And so by God being the only one that can create life, there's a million sperm that run up to that egg. And how many of them don't make it? How many of them don't connect? The one that God allows to connect is an intentional process by God and God only. We have zero interfering to do with that. So when he does that, that's his way of inflicting a process. And I feel that by us using our human right and our power to reverse that, we are basically insinuating that God made a mistake, because we feel as though for whatever reason in our human life and in our understanding, it doesn't fit. I'll use that word since it's not, you don't like convenient. I'll use that it doesn't fit for whatever reason. It doesn't fit my mental health. It doesn't fit my health. It doesn't fit my lifestyle. In my mind, it's convenience, but in that sense, it's too much power.
I get it. I get it. But this is my thing, right? So I'm going to spin the block on like the whole God thing, right? I want to make it clear. I'm very much religious.
Yes.
Okay.
And,
so I know
and by the way, that's where we met. We met in Catholic school. Okay.
Got our first Holy Communion together.
Which, by the way, I'm no longer Catholic, but we'll talk about that another day.
Me neither, girl.
We'll talk about that another day.
Sorry, but anyway, I don't like the idea of the way that we always, and I'm not saying that you're doing it, because I know your mind, your heart, and all that good stuff, and I know that that's not the case, but I don't like the way that the idea of God and religion is always perverted to push someone's agenda, right?
Right.
Even now with the whole political situation being what it is, it's always, oh, if a child was meant to be, it will be, and da-da-da-da-da. No. Historically, there had already been a hot button issue, right? Because people feel passionately about their Bible and whatever they believe, whatever their interpretation of what the Bible is said in the Bible and things of that nature, right? So there's always been a hot button issue. Why is it now that we finally push it through? Oh, it seems like the natural white American birth rate has decreased. How can we make sure that more of these babies go up? We stop them from getting vacuumed out. You know, so I do hate that idea that we always like to pervert the idea of God, Christianity, moral code, when really the only goal is actually control for the sake of it all.
Now, I will definitely, let me be clear on this. When we were discussing my standpoint on whether I think abortion should be allowed or whether it shouldn't be allowed, that's strictly moral standpoint. It has nothing to do with political standpoint. It has nothing to do, and I think this is where a lot of people in general on this controversial topic are getting, riled up, because where I disagree with Regina on my moral standpoint of abortion, I completely 1000% agree on the political standpoint.
But you don't understand that my political standpoint is also, it's funny because my political standpoint and my moral standpoint for myself don't align, right?
Yeah, right.
Because
See, for
me, I morally, I don't care for them. I don't like them.
But you don't feel as though other people should be
politically for so many reasons. There's a plethora of reasons as to why
you don't want a dictatorship.
It's dangerous. It's dangerous in order for you to have that decision. But
hold that thought. I was gonna say, hold that thought, because we gotta touch on a couple things, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back. I know that we got a little bit heated. I'm sure that you guys out there also had your little 2 cents.
Yep.
Please drop it all in the comments. We want to hear exactly what you have to say. I want to hear every last bit of it. But for now, Brittany and I are going to agree to disagree.
Yes, we are. And just a disclaimer, guys, this is something that not only have we already discussed multiple times before this moment, so this is just like reiteration of what we feel.
The repeat.
The repeat. But we are very much at a very okay standpoint with our healthy disagreement. It is perfectly fine. And then one of the reasons why we value a debatable topic and a debate-centered episode for this podcast is because we also appreciate challenging thought. It's a super healthy thing to do. It's a super strengthening thing to do. You should never want to be a yes man throughout your life. It don't matter who it is. It could be your bestie. It could be your parent. It could be your kid. It could be your spouse.
Yep.
Please feel the liberation and the freedom to feel how you feel, say how you feel. Just have a reason to back it up.
Disagree respectfully.
There you go. There you go.
All right. So at this time, I did want to pivot into our second segment because we had to get into more than one, right? Even though we could probably talk for hours on any one topic.
For real.
But another hot button issue lately is immigration, right? I actually wanted to start off because, of course, everybody knows that. Well, everybody doesn't know, but most people know that I'm Haitian, right? And it's been recently in the news that the French have gone out and made a statement saying that they want their Statue of Liberty back, right?
Okay.
Because now the United States is reversing on everything that prompted them to go get it. And for me, it felt like not a little bit hypocritical, wildly hypocritical, right? Because Haiti paid them billions in reparations because we had the audacity to free ourselves from them with the Haitian Revolution, right? And we get down to a place like the United States where Haiti is also often referred to as like a shithole country, like Trump so eloquently said, right? And things of that nature. And time and time again, they're not given the respect. However, even the Louisiana Purchase, the greatest expansion in American history, was made possible because of the Haitian Revolution, right?
So much of our foundation is built on things that were manifested and facilitated outside of this United States, right? So-called United States.
And I think back to, our childhood when they used to always say the great melting pot. Remember that used to be a thing?
Yes, it used to be a thing.
Now it's not.
And it was something, it was a pride culture of America. It was the pride culture of America that, well, I don't even want to, it sounds so crazy saying that when you're woke and you really know the true history of the country. Let me be clear, there never really was a pride culture here in,
it was at least
in
performative.
America. It was, yes, it was a standpoint that was built to create the image. How you go back to my business acumen.
Right.
It was the branding of the country to be a very much of a melting pot, very much of an inclusive and culturally accepted place to be, welcoming of all cultures, learning about all cultures, different parts of the country that you could go to.
The school trips to Ellis Island.
All of it, the whole nine. But the actuality, if we're really clear, this country was hijacked. Okay, it was hijacked and it was bait and switched to benefit the Caucasian and Irish community, the European and Irish community, and it was used to their benefit. It was built and designed, and the systems were put in place to benefit them and pretty much them solely. And everything else was a branding tactic. Everything else was a bait and switch strategy, and it was something to lure people here that they felt as though they needed, including immigrants,
right?
To use once again to their benefit for cheap work, for
free work,
cultural free work, cheap work. Cultural knowledge and experience, the way that we do things, and this is where it is, I guess, fitting to use people of color,
right?
Because when we talk about immigrants, it's people of color for the most part. You have a few areas of the world that are non-melanated cultures that are still considered immigrants, but the majority of immigrants are people of color. And the purpose of bringing these people here during the time of the country's formation was 100% for their own benefit.
Right.
It was what they could pull from everybody else to make America a better place.
And I did want to touch on that because what you said was perfect. You said that everything that they did at that time to go ahead and accept immigration was for their own benefit.
For sure.
And then now what has been happening is that these other cultures are coming in and using this country for their own benefit.
And they don't like it.
You know, taking things back to try to do things for their own communities and things of that nature. And it's just like, well, what are you doing? This is America and things of that nature. You're taking our jobs, rah, the whole nine. And it turns into this violent, aggressive hate
Attack.
toward them. Yeah, because
I think too, it's very much convenient.
Yeah.
Since we love this word, this episode, it's very much.
Don't get me started.
It's very much, I think, convenient for American government to pull the card of, things like crime and things like all of these things, because it actually takes away their accountability to deal with their own issues here.
Speaking of crime,
Their own issues.
Did you see that now what they were doing was that they were shipping them off to, I hope I'm not misspeaking, but to Venezuela?
And guess what, guys? If we ever misspeak, I'm going to just put the disclaimer out there. If we ever misspeak on anything, on any episode ever, check us in the comments. We're very much okay with criticism. We're not one of them, but go ahead.
Especially, I think that a big part of why we wanted to do this debate club was to encourage people to do their own darn research.
Period.
I think especially in today's society, everybody loves to reiterate everything that they saw off of Instagram. I promise you, you cannot do any dissertation and cite Instagram. Don't do it.
For
Don't
real.
do it.
Y'all sound like the kids. I saw this on TikTok.
Instagram, yeah.
Girl.
TikTok taught me, baby.
Yes.
TikTok University is good for teaching you how to clean your grout.
Hang up your cap and gown, baby. Hang up your cap and gown.
But anyway, before we lose it, they were shipping off detainees to Venezuela for $6 million. I believe it was like the endowment to go ahead and house them in Venezuelan jails. It's giving slave trade.
Oh, yeah, the whole nine. Even the stuff that they have going on with ICE. Like, the whole process is very predatory. Yeah. It's very much... it's giving coward on the government's part, because there's a lot of issues that we have in this country, and every country has issues.
Right.
But there's a lot of issues we have in this country, and instead of them taking the accountability and putting the proper results in place, they want someone or something to blame it on.
Someone
and how
has
convenient
to be the collective
the
enemy.
scapegoat. Yes, and how convenient is it to blame it on those people, right? Those people. And so and this is the other thing, the part two of it is anything that in American history that the government has shamed or kicked to the side or made look bad, it's always been brought back around to make money later.
Right.
Okay? Let's talk about marijuana, right?
Absolutely.
It was the worst thing in the world. You got people still to this day serving time for marijuana, for selling it, for taking it, for possession of it. And what did the government do? They legalized it and taxed it, okay? And now the medicinal effects of it are just so, you get rainbows and butterflies, and it's just the best thing. It's the best thing in the world. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that it's not.
The bar for acceptability is if they can profit off of it.
Exactly. Yeah. And most of the time what they do is they kick it while it's down first. They destroy it, they tear it apart, they make it the worst thing in the world. And then once they get it, out of circulation, then they go behind closed doors and figure out a way how they're going to take it over and make money out of it.
So many of our systems that we have in this country are designed to kind of cannibalize themselves, right? They do all these things and they think that they can just take and there's no repercussion to that, right?
Right.
Like the immigration system. It felt really good and easy for them to just create this common enemy and say, you know what, this is the problem with our country. They're taking our jobs, they're taking this, they're going to kidnap your wife and kid on the way to school because they're criminals hiding under a bridge. But we immediately saw the effects to that once it went into place, right? Once they went ahead and removed the idea of the sanctuary cities and things of that nature. Remember they started raiding car washes in North Philly?
It was ridiculous, yes.
They were raiding car washes in North Philly, and then people start showing up to their job sites.
And look, this was the full circle to my point why I said they kick things when it's down and then try to monetize it, because that's what I believe Trump is on his way to doing. He already started. I was going to say he already started.
You didn't see the Gaza Strip promo?
Yes, and I already heard him briefly, like, I tap in and out of it because for my mental health, I can't be fully tapped in. I just can't. But I can't be fully tapped out either because I'd be a fool. So I got to find a happy medium. So I've caught somewhere in the midst of tapping in and tapping out, I've caught Trump talking about a visa process.
The $5 million.
$5 million. So either you want them here or you don't.
No, we're literally for sale.
Exactly. So this is the part where I need American citizens to wake up and use your common sense and be able to call bullshit bullshit, because you can't in one token say that you don't want them here for all these non-monetary reasons and then say, but they can come here if they pay. So now that they pay this much money, we don't have to worry about all those things that you stood so firmly on, right? Like, in what way does that make any sense?
And let's be clear, the people who can afford to pay the $5 million were never affected by any of our immigration processes anyway.
In the first place.
Anyway.
Let's be clear, not even considering the fact that how about they probably don't want to be here in this shithole country anyway.
Yeah.
If I had $5 million in foreign currency to be able to pay my way to America, the last place I would be is here. Trust me.
They come here to make money and go about their day.
Exactly. I need no form and fashion of citizenship whatsoever. I will happily go back to my tropical islands and my land where I'm pulling mangoes off of trees and not worrying about the bullshit chemicals in my food like we have over here. So let's be clear. Yeah.
Absolutely. Damn, there's not much to debate when we're firmly on the same side of the fence when it comes
If you
to this
disagree,
immigration thing.
put it in the comments.
Put it in the comments. And I really, really want to understand why some people are still so strongly against the idea of immigration, right? And I think that it's all propaganda that we've been fed.
It is. It's
that so many people have brought. Like, they're taking our resources. What resources? I beg of you. Especially if you're talking
they're
about...
bringing resources here. They're bringing resources here,
which
is why they welcomed immigration in the first place, because they wanted to know how do you guys utilize this and that herb and this process and this strategy? How do you just let me use the prime example in Africa where women wrap a piece of cloth around and carry their babies on their backs and on their fronts.
Right.
Now we have these fun little Graco snapping packs that we carry these babies on. That is an African culture practice. That is not something that America or Graco thought up and decided they were just going to invent.
Babies,
These are cultural practices and processes that we have as an American country snatched and took away from these different various immigrants that have come here and showed us their ways.
That's what we say. Like, when you strip America down to its studs, American culture down to its studs, there's nothing.
There's no stuff.
It's just a smorgasbord of all these different things, different attributes that have come from African culture, from European culture, from wherever, Caribbean culture, everywhere.
It's a combination.
It's a combination. It's a combination. We took a little bit from everywhere, and it makes us unique. It makes us unique, but I truly don't understand it. It gives me a headache sometimes.
Yeah.
Absolutely so.
Yeah. So what's our next topic?
Our next topic. So, moving along. The next one might be a little bit dicey. But
Dicey.
Spicy.
Put your big girl draws on for this one. Put your big boy draws on.
So, it's also caused a lot of discourse lately because LGBTQIA plus initiatives have been such a hot button issue in so many ways, right? We're seeing things, I would say propaganda, like, oh, they're forcing drag readings in kindergarten. It probably happened one place, one time. It's not creeping into every classroom, and they're not forcing your 5-year-old son to put on his wig and big girl heels, and things of that nature. And I want to know your take on it, especially because you've had so many of these different things that include I guess some of the laws, especially that got initiated in Florida, where they're not allowed to say anything. What's the word? The Don't Say Gay bill. Right?
Yeah.
So students are not allowed to talk about anything like sexual orientation related and things like that in or around school grounds and things of that nature. I want to start with, picking your brain on how you feel about some of that stuff.
Yeah, so in my opinion, where I stand, and correct me if I'm wrong, LGBTQIA, yes?
Plus.
I
think.
Okay. So with this community, this is where 50% of me stands with Regina's original standpoint that we discussed with her standpoint on abortion, where she feels as though she's pro-choice. I am pro-choice when it comes to LGBTQIA+. I'm pro-choice because I feel as though my own moral standpoints, whatever they are, that is something that once again affects an individual and an individual only, and their lifestyle and whoever their sexual partner or non-partner is going to be. And so because that's an intimate space as it is, there's literally no need for the government or outside entities to have control or regulation over that space as an adult.
And you know what? I also believe that a lot of the regulation and things that we have are because people believe that everything needs to be all or nothing when it comes to policy, right?
Yeah.
Literally everybody on the planet wins when everybody is free to make their own damn choice, right? So everything, even down to like the whole, all gender bathrooms. Why? You know what I mean? It's not. I understand.
I was
there
going
are
to
some
say
people,
that's the
hold
part.
on. I understand that there are
that's the
some
part.
people who are non-binary and things of that nature. I get it. Go where you are comfortable, because I'm a big fan of, especially like as a mother, right? Kids and stuff like that. When you deal with a lot of kids, you know that everybody can't have their way.
Yeah.
So what
that's
do you do?
The part I was going to say.
You go with the thing that's going to probably be better for the majority, because everybody can't be happy.
Everybody can't be
and
happy.
I think that by doing like a non-gender bathroom and things like that, I'm a grown woman and I still don't like it. Especially, when you go to like bars and stuff like that, and there's like a open bathroom and it's just, everybody's in there together. I don't like it, and
I think there's an easy solution to the bathroom issue. Instead of going one way or the other way, we could just definitely have a women's bathroom, definitely have a men's bathroom, and just definitely have an other.
But
and
literally
leave
the
it
family
open.
restroom, that's always been a thing.
Leave it open too. But see, this is the thing. The problem is, like you said, the all or nothing, where people are saying they all should just be other.
Right.
No, because then some people are not comfortable with that.
Now you're infringing on me and my comfortability.
Exactly, and vice versa. And so this is where my other 50% of my opinion, where I start to defer when it comes to pro-choice, when it comes to LGBTQIA+. Where I start to defer is when we talk about children. I'm extremely protective over the space of children being associated with this community, for the simple fact that this is literally the baseline of my standpoint. LGBTQIA is a sexually oriented community. There's no way around it. It's completely about sexual preference and gender, and how they intertwine with each other. And so to me, that is not a place for children, period. It's just not. To me, it equates, if we are going to involve DHS because somebody is having an inappropriate sexual conversation with a child, and say that this is not appropriate and DHS needs to be involved because there's inappropriate sexual conversation, then I believe LGBTQIA is included in that content. It is inappropriate conversation for children because it involves sex, it involves sexual preference, it involves sexual attraction.
This is where I disagree.
And this is where, that's where we disagree.
Yeah.
But this is where, because if we look at the world before LGBTQIA, it was not introduced to children. Family dynamic, yes, and that's where some of the lines may blur. But we don't go to school and talk to our children about, at least not the teachers anyway. Kids gonna talk about what they want to talk about. But as far as being a part of a curriculum or being accepted in the classroom, we don't go to school talking to little girls and saying, hey, do you like little boys? Or, hey, do you like little girls? Or do you think that this little girl is attractive and would you want to be with her when you get older? That would be inappropriate.
And that's still not part of any curriculum anywhere. And I think that's where I get this thing where I'm just like, you guys are yelling at a boogeyman that doesn't exist, right? Everybody's like, no, don't do it with the kids. And that's where I'm saying, like, I disagree when you said the whole thing about having these inappropriate conversations. And I also disagree that LGBTQIA is just about, sexuality and who you want to be with and things like that. It's also about gender identity for some people. And those, I think that it's very easy to conflate the two, but they are separate, right? Because your sexuality, your sexuality deals with like your level of attraction and things of that nature. Your gender identity is just how you feel, right? Regardless of how I feel, like you always say about your person and your choice, that's how you feel, right? So for me, although as a parent, I might not agree with allowing like a child, like if I had like a 5-year-old to go ahead and be okay with changing their pronoun. Because for me, I think that children oftentimes, they don't know what they want. And I think that it's unfair to sit there and say, okay, well, this person that I know, they're 50 and they're married and they live in Palm Springs and they're so happy and they knew since they were 5. I think that's unfair to use that as the blatant, because so many of us want so many different things through childhood, through adolescence, through early
adulthood. If my kid wants to go outside and play in traffic, am I supposed to let them do it because they feel like it's going to make them happy, or they're so depressed because they can't?
Right.
No.
And then on top of that, kids tend to draw towards what they see. Right now,
Exactly.
it's a very big
Exactly.
issue. Not issue, but it's a very big topic and
Yeah.
things of that nature.
Yeah, that
so
they're exposed
there's
to.
a lot of exposure. So kids are like moths to a flame when it comes to exposure and things of that nature.
Yep.
So I do think that it's unfair to call parents homophobic when they don't want to accept what the child might think
I agree.
is a difference in gender identity at such a young age, when it can literally be what they decided this week, and a week before it could be that I want to be an astronaut.
Exactly.
And they don't understand.
Exactly.
And I think
it's
I think
simply
that as a
parental
parent,
regulation. That's the simplicity of it. It's parental regulation.
But this is where I agree with you, because it needs to be parental regulation. It needs to stay that way.
Yeah.
And I think that you need to have the right to discuss as much or as little as you want in your house, just the same way that you do sexuality. How many of these people don't discuss the birds and their bees with their kids? You know what I mean?
Right.
So if we want to talk about, sexuality, it doesn't have to be just the LGBTQIA community.
Just sexuality,
It
period.
can just be,
Yeah.
it can also be the heteronormative values. So many of them are just about suppression.
Absolutely.
And I think that when they get into the suppression of everything in the sexual nature with their kid, they go into hyper suppression when it comes to their community.
I agree.
And my thing is, yes, I think that children's space should be protected. You know how I feel about my kid.
Yes.
My kid's about to turn 13 and she still play with dolls.
Right.
So I think that you should very much keep kids. However, you should also have conversations with them, right?
For sure.
So even though my child
Especially
still plays
as
with
things
dolls,
in the world
I had
shift. You have to.
honest conversations with her about exactly the world around her, how it operates, the way that people may or may not interact with one another.
Yep.
So I will say that soon enough, once we come back from the next break, we can actually even pivot into the different types of conversations that we have with our kids about, some of the tougher things.
Yeah. I think that the overall idea is that I do agree with you when it comes to leaving the power in the household when it comes to how much or how little you want to introduce your children or not introduce them or what they should be introduced to. The problem comes in at where companies, businesses, schools, organizations, and places want to be either super inclusive or super exclusive of a thing that it brings it home for us when we're not ready for that. So it forces our hand to introduce things to our children that we may not have wanted to introduce, or vice versa. But overall, I personally say leave the kids out of it. I'm not for the kids' shirt that say pride. Yeah. I'm not for I'm just not for it. It's just a space that I feel like needs to be that they don't need to be.
I think it forces them to grow up too soon, right?
Yeah.
And it's not about just LGBTQIA.
Right. Heterosexual either. They don't need to be discussing.
Because even like I said, even like the heteronormative, I guess, whatever equivalent, so to speak.
Exactly.
I don't think it's cute when a 6-year-old is talking about their boyfriend and girlfriend.
Exactly. It's not a cute conversation.
It's not
period.
time yet.
Exactly.
It's not time yet.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So thank you. We are going to go out for a break and be back soon.